Constraints, as the name suggests, are used to constrain or fully define our sketches. And this will be a very important concept in creating our sketches and designs. So let's take a look at using some of our constraint tools. First, whenever I'm in any sketch here, I can see all of my constraint tools on the right-hand side of my screen. And notice by default, and in many cases, I would actually like auto constraint turned on, and that will just give me the ability to automatically have constraints drawn in. We'll learn more about this later on, but in this lesson, I'm going to turn auto constraints off, just because I want to show how we can throw in our constraints manually as well. So let's take a look at using some of these constraints. So if I tap to select my line here, I can see that currently this line is pretty much completely unconstrained, meaning I can really move it wherever I'd like. I could change the angle, change the length. It's pretty much completely unconstrained. However, I can apply a number of constraints to this if I'd like to further constrain the line. One, for example, I'll just tap to select that line. I'll take a quick look at the lock constraint. So if I just tap to lock this in, now you may have noticed that both endpoints of this line have changed from a white color to now a dark color. That's just indicating to me that this is now locked in place. So of course, what this means is now if I were to tap to select the line and try to move it all around the screen, of course I cannot, because I've locked this into place. I've thrown in that lock constraint. Very similarly, I could tap to select the line and now tap unlock. Again, taking a look at the endpoints there, they've turned from the dark color to the white color, indicating to me that they are now unlocked. And if I tried to move this line around now, I'm seeing it's not locked in place anymore. It's once again unconstrained. So similarly, just like I did for the entire line, I can do this for individual points as well. So if I just tap to select the bottom point of my line here, currently unconstrained, can move it wherever I'd like. But I can lock in that individual endpoint as well. Now notice I could lock it on the right hand side under all of my constraints. I also have this little lock icon right underneath my point here, and I could tap that as well. And once again, I see that darker color coming in, showing me that it's locked in. So this is just another way to lock a point in, maybe a little bit faster. But it's just done the exact same thing. So now my bottom point has been locked in. I can see that if I tried to move this in any direction, again, it's unable to move as it's been locked in. However, my top point has not been locked, so I should still be able to move that top point. Similarly, I could tap back on that bottom point to select and unlock just the same. And now I'm back to where I started with a completely unconstrained line. Another very commonly used constraint that I'm using very frequently is the horizontal and vertical constraint. So again, I'll tap to select this line here, and notice I could lock it in, of course, or I have a constraint called horizontal and vertical, and I can tap this constraint, and notice now my line has become vertical, and it's also showing this new vertical constraint. So now if I tap to move my line, I can in fact move it wherever I'd like, but notice it is remaining vertical. And even if I tried to tap and move one of the endpoints to try to make this no longer vertical, again it's kind of locked in that constraint of being a vertical line. If I may change my mind, no longer want this line to be vertical, again, I can get rid of those constraints just by tapping on the constraint itself. I should get that X above the constraint icon, and that will just delete that constraint. So now this line is no longer constrained to be vertical, which means I should be able to move any endpoint and see that now it can be any orientation I may want. It works just the same with horizontal. So now if I tap my line, I could throw in the horizontal constraint. And how this works is if the line is closer to being a vertical line, when I tap the horizontal vertical constraint, it will become a vertical. Whereas if it's closer to being a horizontal, it will throw in the horizontal constraint. So currently it looks like this line right here is fairly horizontal. So if I were to tap that horizontal vertical constraint, it should come in to be a horizontal line and getting that horizontal constraint icon again. If I try to move any point of my line here, it's going to stay horizontal. And if I ever wanted to remove that constraint, I could tap on the constraint icon itself, tap the X, and now it is no longer constrained to be horizontal. So in the next few lessons, we'll take a look at learning even more of the constraints available to us.